is going on, everybody? My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson.
Hi, Kyle.
Howdy. This is episode 7 of the Review Show. Weekly podcast, kind of a book club style thing where we talk about comics or movies or anime, manga, all sorts of stuff. We rate it, we watch it, we come back here and we talk about it. This week, though, was something you pitched, Melissa, and I was the one that picked it. I picked this one because I thought it would be the one that I would like the least.
Oh.
Yeah. Because you did, there was the anime, I think it's like Agru Ketso or something like that. I don't know how to
something like that.
pronounce it, something like
yeah,
that.
I
It's
don't
all the
remember
rage
how
now.
to pronounce it. Yeah, I can't pronounce it off the top of my head either, but it is that Netflix anime about the red panda who works in an office and does death metal karaoke.
Yes, exactly. And I, literally the day before, put that on my, to-watch list. So I was like, I know I'm probably gonna really enjoy watching that one. I still haven't watched it yet. But it was that, and then I don't remember what your third pitch was, but what we're talking about today is the one I was like, you know what? I feel the least comfortable with that one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one. And it is Joss Whedon's...
I'm glad you were brave.
Yeah. It's Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing, which is based off of a Shakespeare play.
Yes.
Now, you said you were really in the mood for this one, so tell me about it. How many times have you seen this? How much do you love this movie?
I've seen this once before. I've seen, in the 90s, there was a Kenneth Branagh, much more traditional version of Much Ado About Nothing I've seen once or twice.
Okay.
I read it in college, and I listened to an audio performance of it that I think starred David Tennant and Catherine Tate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a story I'm pretty familiar with, and I've been wanting to revisit it. It's we're right in that edge between spring and summer, and there's that whole springtime in the air, and then we're coming up on
wedding
Shakespeare
season.
in the
Yeah.
Yeah. We're coming up on Shakespeare in the Park here in St. Louis. It isn't this show, it's Romeo and Juliet, but I've just had it on the brain. And then also, after rewatching the Avengers movies to get ready for Infinity War, I just missed seeing Clark Gregg.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in this, so it was just a line of a couple things. And I did want to throw you something that maybe you weren't as experienced with, and I wanted to see, what you thought about this.
Sure, yeah. Well, Shakespeare in general is something that I don't know much about. I can't really say I have a solid opinion of his works. To be like, I don't really like his stuff, or I like these ones, I don't like those ones. Because a couple weeks ago, Paul and I, when this podcast was still just called The Whatnauts, we did an episode on Prince of Cats, which is a comic book, which is basically a retelling of Romeo and Juliet from the perspective of Tybalt. And it was fascinating. And it was set in 1980s New York, and they had samurai swords, and it was it was crazy. Funny enough, about the same time I was reading that for the podcast, my roommate had this movie on TV. She likes to leave movies on for her dogs when she goes out. She's like, it's sound, it makes them think there's people in the house. It just kind of puts them at ease. And I came down, I think it was a Saturday, and I came down to make some lunch, and this movie was on. I had no idea what it was. I was just getting, little bits and pieces. And I was like, oh, they're speaking in Shakespearean language. That's interesting. Oh, that's the dude from the Avengers. That's Agent Coulson. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. And I had no idea that this was it. And so I started watching it, and we got to the scene that I saw, and I was like, oh, I remember this. I kind of know this movie. But yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I still don't think it's my cup of tea. But I did laugh out loud a couple times.
Yeah,
so that
it's
was
funny.
Good. It's an interesting mix of genres. I feel like
it is. Yeah,
it's just a whirlpool of all of this sorts of stuff. Because there are funny moments, but then it's kind of about love and betrayal, and so it's very serious and dramatic in that sense. But with Joss Whedon's version in particular, it's kind of this updated, modern like style. But then they're still speaking in the Shakespearean language and stuff like that. So
yeah.
It's one of those things. It's like, this is such an oddball movie, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, I asked you to kind of give me an elevator pitch last week. Can I have you do that again for the people out there who may not have seen this movie?
Yes. Okay, so we were talking about Clark Gregg earlier. He plays Don Leonardo, who is, in the original Shakespeare, he's like some sort of a nobleman. And he has his daughter Hero and his niece Beatrice. They're not both sisters. I was thinking of Taming of the Shrew. It's not two daughters, it's a daughter and a niece. And he has an old friend of his, Don Pedro, who is a soldier returning from a victory in battle. Don Pedro and his assortment of soldiers, including a man named Benedict, and Don Pedro's surly half-brother, Don John, I think is his name. They, on their way back from this victory in battle, they go to stay with Don Leonardo at his estate for like a month. And while they're there, one of Don Pedro's soldiers, Claudio, completely falls in love with Hero. They're going to get married in a week. And to pass the time in this week until the wedding, everybody is going to try and get Beatrice and Benedict together because they've known each other for years. They're bickering constantly. They had like a one-night stand once, and there's so much sexual tension brewing between them, and everybody's like, let's get this together too. Like, love is in the air, the magic is happening, it's real, we can do this. And then Don John, who's just a plain dealing villain, he says himself, he wants to mess things up, so he has one of his soldiers, or one of like the people in his entourage, whose name is Baraccio, I think. He has Baraccio sleep with one of Hero's serving women dressed as Hero, and he takes Claudio and Don Pedro out to the window. Like, they're standing in the yard, and they look up at the window, and they're like, see, look, Hero's being unfaithful to you, because they can't tell it's not her, it's her serving woman dressed as her. So the wedding is called off, and then we get to meet Dogberry, the local constable, who's like trying to investigate this whole thing. Who's one of the highlights of the whole thing, really, Dogberry and his little local police force. And eventually, the betrayal is revealed, the wedding is back on, Hero was said to have died of heartbreak, and Don Leonardo is telling Claudio, you were wrong about my daughter, you shamed her, you brought her to death. To make up for this, you are going to marry this other niece I have who looks exactly like Hero. And they take off the veil, and it's just Hero. She's like, I wasn't dead. We can get married now.
Fooled you.
And then along the way, like, Beatrice and Benedict really do confess their love for each other, and then they get married also at the end, and it ends in a double wedding, and Don John is caught.
There you go. That's the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It's a lot of fun, and it's a pretty quick movie too. It's not super long, so you can go watch that. It's on Hulu. That's where I found it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got to watch it on there. But yeah, go go check it out. It helped me to put subtitles on too.
That's what I did too. Yeah.
If I couldn't really understand what they were saying, because it is in that iambic pentameter, old Shakespearean language. But yeah, go check it out. If, however, you guys are joining us here live on Twitch, thank you for joining in. Come hang out with us. Come talk with us in the chat. This is a live show, so you guys can give us your thoughts on this as well and join in the conversation. But if you miss the live show, that is A-okay, because we put this up on YouTube and as a podcast the following week, so you can get it no matter what universe you are in. That being said, let's dive in.
Yeah, and I do want to say that even if you aren't like a Shakespeare person, this is one of Shakespeare's comedies. I feel like the way I just described it may have made it sound complicated, but it's pretty easy to get the gist of it. Even if that intimidates you,
fairly simple.
This is still a good movie. Like, I had a friend over to watch it with me who doesn't know anything about Shakespeare, but he's a big Joss Whedon fan. Like, he's watched through Buffy and Angel and Firefly multiple times over. And he was able to sort of appreciate it on that level. Like, oh, these are these actors I've seen a whole bunch. These are these little stylistic notes I've seen a whole bunch. It's really neat to see these combined in this whole new context.
Yeah, it's always neat when you see a director work with the same actors in multiple things and then get to see, like, both the actor, like, how they can portray all these different roles in these different films and stuff like that. Like we mentioned, there's Agent Coulson from the Avengers in this. He's Don Leonardo, but we also have Baron Zemo from Captain America Civil War, who's also the bad guy in this. And he kind of does the exact same thing in Civil War. So he's just like, I'm just going to get everyone else to fight.
Yeah, there's plenty of people in this. Nathan Fillion and Sean Marr from Firefly. Amy Acker and Alexis Denisov, who I believe are both on Angel. Even, like, the serving woman, like Hero's lady-in-waiting, who is inadvertently part of what leads to Hero's downfall and then ultimately, again, an uprising. That's the waitress from Avengers. If you remember that bit at the very end where they're talking to, like, all the people in the New York streets and there's that woman with, like, a nice blouse on and, like, a waitress name tag, she's like, Captain America saved my life. If you remember that woman, which I do because I've seen Avengers, like, 12 times, like, she's in this.
I wouldn't have caught that.
Yeah. Joss Whedon was directing Avengers when he was starting to really think about making this movie. Like, he walked around the set with a copy of the script.
Kind of say, yeah.
Yeah, he walked around with a copy of, like, the Shakespeare script, like, in his back pocket. Like, he was thinking about this in the background. This was already something he wanted to do. Because he used to have periodic Shakespeare live readings at his house. With just, cast members of his and other actor friends, and he would cast it himself. He would, like, plan it, like, a month out, like, okay, I'm getting all of these people, and these are who I want to play these parts, and if you want to go really crazy and do, like, a funny voice with it, or just take whatever angle you want to with this story, and he did have
in costume, or,
Yeah.
Huh.
And he cast, Alexis Denisov and Amy Acker in these roles once. And he's like, this is so good. We have to make a movie about this now, right? We need to put this on screen for people to see.
Yeah, it seems like he did this one in between Avengers 2 and Captain America Civil War.
Well, he didn't do Civil War. That one was the Russo brothers.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is that he did this one, and then immediately after that is when the villain in this went and did Baron Zemo in Civil War there. So lots of crossovers. Pretty cool.
Yeah. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces in here.
Definitely. I know... why am I blanking on his name right now? Christopher Nolan does this a lot too, where
Yeah.
he uses the same actors over and over. They're in Batman, they're in Inception, they're all there, the whole gang.
Yeah. I love seeing stuff like that because it reminds me of just high school theater.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I know this one girl is always going to be cast as the young ingenue role in every musical for the 4 years she is here. And it's like, oh, you use this guy in an interesting place. Like, this is always the dad. This is always, like, the wacky neighbor. And just having gone through that experience, like, in high school, I love to see it portrayed, like, on the big screen in Hollywood. Like, yeah, we also have our standard dad.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So let's see. Yeah, what did I mentioned that I liked this more than I thought I would. I was kind of expecting this to be, I mean, yeah, it's a romance film. It's kind of a rom-com. But
Yes.
I was kind of expecting it to lean a little bit more into the romance stuff, rather than it be as kind of lighthearted as it was. Like the couple times that made me, actually the first time that made me really laugh out loud is when they introduced Nathan Fillion's character, and he's like talking, because he's like, I guess, the main like cop. He's like the sheriff,
Yes.
or the constable, and he's like, well, we need to go out on patrol. Who are the best men here? And they're like, well, there's these two guys because they can read and write.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, sure, we'll take them. And he's like, you know what? You look like a fine young man. You get the lantern. And he hands him this flashlight. And the guy just looks so happy. He's just like, yeah, I get to hold the lantern. And it made me bust out laughing. Because he doesn't even say a thing, but it's just his expression. He's delighted. He is so happy. And I'm just like, that shouldn't be that funny, but he is. It's Nathan Fillion's kind of like suave, he's a funny character without being funny. Like he's actually playing it straight, but just like knowing him as an actor, it's just like he's funny. Like what he's doing is actually kind of funny, but then he has these like nitwits like around him, and it's just like, this is great. I love it. And then that scene. That was the scene that I like first just laughed out loud. But then a scene that I didn't expect is when I'm gonna be terrible with names here. But the guy that they're trying to get fall in love with the girl, the two like whippersnappers, Benedict. When he is like he doesn't yet suspect that he is like being tricked into liking this girl, and he's eavesdropping onto this conversation outside while everyone else is inside. Like he's looking in the window, listening in, but as they move from room to room, he's sneaking in the background. Yes. He's doing a terrible job of it. It is so obvious he's there, and it's so obvious that they see him, and he's like,
it's so
doing
cartoony.
It's like from Emperor's New Groove when Crunk goes out sneaking, and he's like,
yes, it's like that.
And he's sneaking around, he's rolling into bushes and falling over, and it's just like, this is so silly. Like this is not what I would expect from a romantic comedy. Like, I would expect it to have actual honest jokes, rather than this guy just being an idiot. Like, and it's just like, this is just light-hearted fun. So I think those two scenes really hooked me. I was like, okay, this is good. This is fun. Mm-hmm. What about you? First time you saw this, what was the one that what was the first scene that really made you laugh?
Well, I was already familiar with the play the first time I'd seen this. Like, I'd already read it and listened to it and watched the Kenneth Branagh version. But I think what might have really sold me on the Whedon version of it is, I mean, that's one of Joss Whedon's, like, sort of trademarks, is that, like, quick back and forth dialogue. And right. I think he, even though he didn't write any of this, he directs it very well. And, like, the actors he has worked with know how to do that exactly.
Yeah, they
just on point the whole time.
They credited Whedon with the adaptation, like the
yes.
screenplay adaptation. So you, for you, what sold it was just the banter that you're used to from those guys. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it was just a really strong execution of what that originally is in the play, and I loved the style he did this in. Like, for listeners who haven't seen this, the movie is, it's all the original dialogue, it's set in modern day, and it's entirely in black and white.
Yes, which I'm sure we will talk about that in a little bit here. So let me ask you this then. You've seen multiple versions of this then. How like, what is different about this version compared to the original?
In the Kenneth Branagh version, for instance, which is set, it's set in kind of the time period, well, it's not contemporary, I'll say that. It's not in Shakespearean times, it's in, like, 1800s, you know, this beautiful Italian, villa. And it's a lot closer, it's slightly updated, but it's a lot closer to what Shakespeare originally had, and it does have, it's from, classically trained Shakespearean actors.
Right.
It stars Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson, and also Denzel Washington and Keanu Reeves, who play the half-brothers, which is insane.
Okay.
And it's a lot more, sort of grandiose and boastful, and, like, they are swashbuckling with their words.
Interesting.
Like, I mean, if you've seen Thor, which Kenneth Branagh also directed, it feels kind of like that, yeah. And this one felt, like, crisper and classier, but also with this sort of goofball
much more suave,
side to it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a suave movie.
Indeed, a very suave movie. But yeah, so the play, like the actual original Shakespeare play, do they cut anything out? Because I have a feeling this is much more condensed than what the actual play is. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it is a little condensed, and I dug into my closet and I pulled out my notebook from the Shakespeare class I took in college.
Oh, wow.
And I found my original notes about this, and then I also went and revisited, like, a SparkNotes summary of it to get prepared. And, like, the original play, Beatrice's dad is also there. Like, it's these two brothers and their daughters living in this villa. He has a minor role, but he is there. And I feel like he isn't really necessary, so I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't even notice he was gone while I was watching this version of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but it's pretty true to the play. Other than that, like, I don't really remember any big differences.
Cool. We mentioned the black and white stuff. I want to talk about that. Since this is a movie rather than a play, we're kind of shown scenes how Whedon wants us to see them and stuff like that. Why do you think he chose black and white? What do you think that does for this play? Or this movie?
Me and my friend got this from the library, so we had a DVD of it, and we looked into the special features, and there's some cool behind-the-scenes, like, more stuff I can tell you later at the end, as, like, a coda to this whole thing.
Okay.
But we watched this featurette, and he talks about how this has a lot of noir elements to it. Like, he used the black and white because this was such, like, a low-budget production to sort of add this extra production value to it, like this extra layer of kind of fun fanciness to it that didn't cost anything. Mm-hmm. But he also wanted to play up the noir elements. Like, this is a story that has crime, it has scandal, it has betrayal, it has investigation.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it has, like, scorned lovers and all that, which makes sense. And another thing he does to update this is that instead of this being a company of soldiers, they're almost a company of, like, secret agents or something. Like, they all roll up out of a limousine wearing these crisp black and white suits.
Yeah.
And Don John, who's, like, this soldier's... he's a prince. I don't know if I explained that. He's a soldier prince. And so that makes Don John the sort of illegitimate heir to the throne.
Yeah.
In this movie, he's like a celebrity bad boy, and there's like a photographer hanging around taking pictures of him, and there's like a
they oddly
security
focused
guard
on that photographer, like more than a couple of times. Like, why are you showing me the photographer here?
And
that makes no sense.
That's something that's talked about in one of these featurettes, that Joss Whedon wanted to play up the sense that these guys are, like, even in the original Shakespeare play, they're kind of minor celebrities. And he wanted to play up that air of, like, decadence and, like, gossip around the whole thing. And also that was just the actual on-set photographer for this production. And I guess he wanted to, include them in the feature film as well.
There you go.
So they would be on both sides of the camera.
When you first watched this, though, before you knew that, what did the black and white kind of do for you? What did it make you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I liked it, and it felt to me like we're going to pare a lot of things down. The star of this is the words. It is the performances. Like, we've got wonderful costumes, wonderful sets, but I mean, the set is his actual house, I think. But really, the star of this is words and performances, and let's just take a lot of the visual extra elements out of this, and you can focus just on those. Like, it's a way of
kind of what I was thinking
making
too.
Yeah, it's a way of making the things they want to stand out really stand out, because there's less to distract you.
Yeah, because when we did Prince of Cats, that was kind of one of my complaints. Like, visually, that comic book looked amazing, and there was bright colors everywhere, and it was this kind of like hip-hop, graffiti influenced art style, and it's just visually there's a lot happening. And so that mixed with the iambic pentameter, it's a lot to take in. And so I think watching this at first, I didn't really know what to think. I tried to not be like, oh, okay, this is a low budget film. It's probably, not all that good. Who knows? We'll see. But it, like, as it went on, it was like, okay, no, I think they're just kind of taking the element of color away so I can focus on something else.
Yes.
And I think it helped to simplify it, because it is that big hodgepodge of all sorts of stuff, right? The old and the new mixed with this and mixed with that, and updated and modern and old, and oh hey, dogs are barking in the background. But I ended up liking it fine. I don't think it's really meant to add stuff to it per se, but now that you mention the, like, oh, I want to bring out the noir stuff, that makes sense, and I think in that perspective does add to this film, because I didn't view this as a noir film at all. And so that to me is an interesting perspective. Like, yeah, noir got its name because they were low budget and they didn't have lights. That's literally why it's called noir. And so yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing, because I think a lot of people, especially before the digital age, black and white was also cheaper. And that's why a lot of like independent films went the black and white route, because it was like, well, it cost less, it wasn't necessarily an artistic choice. It was just that was their constraint. But I think it ends up working really well when the betrayal happens. Like the whole funeral march scene. That scene was beautiful, and it's kind of foggy that day too. So it adds this kind of, I don't know, like this witchy element to it, if that makes sense. It's almost a little bit more magical. And like it's this very serious moment that I think the black and white really adds to in that specific scene. However, I think the rest of it, it was just like, okay, focus on this stuff. Focus on what they're saying rather than, what this house looks like. Is it pink? Is it yellow? Do they have festive party lights up for all of their fancy parties? So yeah. I don't know.
What did you think of the actual story itself, since it was something you weren't familiar with?
It was a little bit difficult at first to kind of figure out what was happening, of just who was who, what exactly they were trying to do, and why. But I think it kind of clicked for me kind of around, let's see, maybe when Nathan Fillion first started coming in. I feel like it was just before that. But then once he kind of came in, then it was like, okay, I think I finally understand where everyone stands here and what exactly is. Well, because like they do the whole like masquerade party, and after that is when I think everything comes together. I just didn't know how it would fit yet, if that makes sense, because that's when they're like, oh, let's get married this weekend, and kind of in the next day or two, let's have these guys fall in love, and I need your help to make that happen. So that I understood, but then I didn't really know how it would play out. And then once they kind of introduced him and there's this cop, I was like, oh, okay, now I kind of understand where things are going here. It's not just like I think, I feel like it's weird to say, but I feel like the inclusion of the cops, of Nathan Fillion's character, really kind of expanded that movie for the better.
Yeah.
Because if it was only a family matter, I feel like it would have been too small and too cramped. But then once it kind of opened up there, I think that's where it's like, okay, I feel like now there's more room to breathe here, if that makes sense. So that's when... Yeah. That's when the story kind of made sense to me, and I ended up liking it. I thought it moved very fast, though. It's a very fast-paced movie. That might be my only complaint, is that it's like, well, obviously it's not realistic that anything like this would happen, but... Yeah. Let's suspend our disbelief for a little while and just have some fun here. Which is why I was like, how long is the actual play? Because I feel like they condensed a whole bunch.
You mean like the actual running time, or like how much time the play takes over?
Yeah, it's why I asked you that earlier, of like, did they chop stuff out or whatnot?
I don't think they cut out a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned it was pretty true to the original, but that's why I asked you that. I was like, things are moving real fast here.
Yeah.
So, because like I'm almost wondering if like it would have been better for it to be a longer thing. Like if this was more of a TV show. And they didn't necessarily live together in the same house. They weren't just like, we'll live here for a month, and we'll figure it out. But if they're in the same town or the same city, and it is like we're the celebrities of this town, and there's the paparazzi and all of that stuff. If that kind of take on it, where it takes much longer, would it have made, like, would I have fallen in love with these characters a little bit more myself? Because I think the pacing and that stuff kind of kept me from liking the characters as much as I could have.
Yeah, and a lot of them are these kind of big, they're stock characters to some sense. Like, Don Leonardo is just like a dad. Yeah. He is just like a nobleman dad. Like, there's not a whole lot that separates him from, like, any Disney king.
So that's kind of my roundabout answer to your how did you like the story? I liked it, but
I thought it was a really good match for the kinds of stories Joss Whedon writes himself. Like, this really is a romantic comedy up until the wedding scene where Claudio, like, completely shames Hero because he thinks she was unfaithful to him, and it gets really dark.
Yeah.
And it stays a little bit dark through that, like, last act. Well, I don't know if it's the actual last act when you break it down, like in the theatrics of the play script, but that last chunk of the movie after that, except for when Nathan Fillion is around, is a lot darker. And it made me think about how Serenity is like a really fun space adventure. And then everything gets very bad. It's very high stakes and drama and death.
Granted, yeah, kind of because Serenity is the sequel or the prequel? I don't remember, to Firefly.
It is the sequel.
It is the sequel. All right. Yeah, so I was going to say, like, by the time we get to Serenity, things are already kind of bad. Like, all of the stuff that Firefly was going in that direction anyways,
Yeah, and he's written other stories like that. Like, I'm not very experienced with Buffy, but I know it's like, I've seen season 1 and it's fun. And then at the end of season 1, it's like, Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die. And the show gets, so deadly in other points later on. And then there's like Dr. Horrible. It's fun. It's a comedy. It's like a weird superhero musical comedy. And then it gets deadly. So I thought it was interesting that there is this mirror between the stuff he has actually written and then this centuries-old piece of work that he is adapting, that it kind of follows the structure he would be writing himself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because I think even looking at Avengers, too, like, it's blockbuster superhero action film, but it's also very lighthearted.
Yes.
Too, right? And so this movie, Much Ado About Nothing, is kind of this lighthearted romance, like rom-com kind of thing, but like you said, it then kind of veers into this darker crime noir thing at the end, where there is this betrayal, and the cops have to come and fix everything, and by the end, it all works out, but it's one of those things. It's like, it kind of has a mix of everything. There's comedy, there's action, there's darker stuff, there's romance, which I think is right up his alley there. So, you are looking at your notes. You
Yeah. It was fun to pull out what I had written about this play when I first learned about it as a college English major, like 5 years ago. And one of the things I have written down is that the lesson of the play is to pay attention.
Interesting.
And I think that's true. Like, the whole thing, like, the people around Beatrice and Benedict are talking up and kind of overinflating and lying, like, oh yes, Beatrice is just completely heartsick over him. Like, they're making a big deal out of it, but that's not false.
Yeah.
All of this stuff wouldn't be working on her unless that was true. And Claudio looks and he sees with his eyes, oh, that looks like my bride-to-be. I recognize her general hair, her clothing, the room she stays in. That's her window, and that's not me that she's with, because I'm right here looking at it with my eyes.
Yeah.
Like, he looks... And he doesn't see. He doesn't, really look at Hiro, this woman he has fallen in love with, who admittedly he has known for, 9 days. But he looks...
Let's be honest, they got drunk at a party once. They probably made out, and, next thing you know, they're wanting to get married.
Yeah, so he looks and he doesn't see, no... If I really knew this woman, I would know that is something she would never do. And the whole title, Much Ado About Nothing, well, first of all, there's the sexual innuendo in it, because if you didn't know, Kyle, and you may not, this might be an English major thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, Shakespeare is 100% all about the sexual innuendos. Everything is a double entendre, Kyle.
Yes.
And so Much Ado About Nothing refers to the... as my professor put it, the nothing between a woman's legs. The lady canyon, I guess you could say. Yes,
Interesting.
Yes. So it's about, it's a sexual pun, but it's also kind of the statement of everybody is making a giant fuss over things. There's Claudio, who... looks at this scene, doesn't really investigate further, doesn't really stop and try and think about it and try and understand it, and he's like, this woman shall be no wife of mine! And then you have Beatrice and Benedict, who so clearly, are a match for each other, and they're so stubborn, and they're so ferocious and bickering that it has to take all of these actions of all of these other people around them to put them together.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know Shakespeare is well known for all the sexual innuendo and stuff, but that's a new one for me. I did not get that. But yeah, I mean, Much Ado About Nothing actually makes me think of Seinfeld, which was a show about nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just, as the name might suggest, they make a much ado about nothing, There's a whole... there's episodes about them just doing stupid stuff, and the store down the street doesn't have the gum that they like, or, it's just stupid stuff. And in the same sense, I think this movie it's... I mean, obviously it was written a long time ago, right? But to me, it's kind of this mockery of the celebrity lifestyle of the paparazzi, and the way these tabloid magazines will cover things. Well, they'll just make up these huge stories over this smallest thing. It's oh, they got drunk at a party once, and now they're getting married, And,
yes!
And it's, that's kind of what it made me think of. Modern, I guess, romance, if that makes sense. Or, the tabloid version of romance. How, you'll go to a party, you'll go to the club, you'll meet someone, you'll know them for 9 whole hours, and then it's okay, well, what are we now, and people don't communicate too. That's one of the things in this movie, is that Benedict and the girl that they're setting him up with, they don't really communicate. They do, but in a way that they're not actually talking about what they need to. And that's kind of what everyone does today on social media and in relationships, where no one wants to have certain conversations. Are we exclusive? Are we not? What does this mean? Where are we? What are your intentions? And I think this movie is just a big see, no one's paying attention. If you guys all just sat down and talked about it, like, you would, this is easy as pie. Come on, guys. In fact, you might learn that these marriages might not last more than a month. Who knows? That's my next question for you. We don't even get to see their lives much after the weddings. Do they stay together? What do you think? Ooh.
I imagine in the sort of classic Shakespearean frame, you have a lot fewer opportunities to meet other people. So I imagine they would stay together just because it's like, where else am I going to meet somebody? The market? And I imagine the two of them are so... they're so stubborn that they're like, well, I agreed to this and I'm not backing down. Like, they'll stay ferociously married until the day they die.
Interesting.
And there is, I did just remember something they did cut out of this movie that is in the original play and is in the Kenneth Branagh version, which is the scene at the masquerade party, I think, where Don Pedro is talking to Beatrice. And there's this little thing of, well, have we ever considered getting together? Like, I think he's, like, playfully flirting with her. And she says something along the lines of, you're too fancy. I would need somebody for everyday wear. Yeah, it's like, you are too high of stature. In that you're like a prince, you're a soldier, you're
high
great man of great deeds. Yeah. And she's like, how would I live an everyday life with you? And I think that is something that Beatrice and Benedict could do. Like, they are on each other's level.
Yeah.
They have similar temperaments. I could imagine the two of them getting into similar hijinks just throughout domestic life.
So, I know that you're also a big fan of Lost, like I am.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things that a scene that I kind of went back to when you pitched this, was the scene. I am blanking on characters' names right now. What's his name? The dude on the island. Widmore. There you go. I was going to say dude on the island. That doesn't narrow it down. So, Widmore and his wife. There's a scene...
Oh, yes.
I want to say in season...
Eloise?
Yes. There's a scene, I want to say in season 5. And spoilers a little bit if you haven't seen Lost. I will try not to spoil it because that show is amazing and I will defend it till I die.
Same.
But when Jack kind of approaches them about the bomb, and you get this sense that they hate each other, that Widmore and Eloise hate, they hate each other's guts. And then it's like, that's my wife. And you're just like, oh, shit.
Yes!
And they're like, but you were just, like, cussing each other out? What's the deal there? And they're just like, that's love. Like, you have to deal with their shit too, you know? And I like, it's kind of one of those like tough love moments for me. I guess that's how I see Benedict and what's her name?
Beatrice.
Yeah, like they already know that they hate each other's guts. But they can deal with that. They know how to deal with that easily because they approach it the same way. And I think it was kind of a similar, not necessarily parallel, but just like, oh, it kind of reminds me of that, where like, yeah, they actually love each other, but they're yelling at one another, you know, and getting in fights and stuff like that. Or as the cliche, you know, all the they must be married if they're arguing that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I can see them kind of sticking together just out of them being stubborn, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think maybe when this was written, it may have been more of a cultural thing for them to stay together.
Yeah.
Too, right? Like once you're married, that's kind of it. Like getting a divorce was very, very hard and very unheard of. I mean, it happened, right? But it's not something that happened often. Whereas today, in modern day times, it happens most of the time. And so I'm kind of wondering if in a modern take, would they really stay together? I don't know if they would.
I could see them being like taking a lot of breaks from each other.
Both of the marriages, too, right? Because there's there's the other one that's kind of been going smooth. They kind of like each other, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna last, especially if they've only known each other for a day and a half. So I mean, I obviously we can't review the movie that we didn't get, right? Like we have to talk about what we have, but it was just kind of interesting for me to think about it in that aspect. If it is kind of a mockery of celebrity lifestyle and all these famous people getting together and hooking up and doing this and that, hey, this might not be the end of the story. This just might be one gossip tidbit in the tabloid. There you go.
Can I tell you some of the other things I learned on the DVD
please
featurettes?
Do.
So the featurettes are also all in black and white.
Good.
Alexis Denisov shows up for his talking head sort of interview, dressed like a Shakespearean character with a fake beard and a big poofy hat with a feather out of it and
wonderful,
a waistcoat and things like that, and it's not commented on, and it's hysterical.
And he's talking normally too, like in modern.
He's talking
it's the
normally,
exact opposite,
dressed like he just stepped off the stage. And they did this really cool thing where the film was going to be playing at South by Southwest. And they decided last minute that a bunch of them wanted to go. Like Joss Whedon and a lot of the cast members wanted to go and present it and be there to celebrate it. And it was close enough that they're like, okay, we can't get good airfare. We can't get good lodging anywhere near the festival. What if we rented a giant tour bus and we drove there and we slept and lived on the bus? And so it's all of them on this huge rock star tour bus, and they had it wrapped around the outside. It's like Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing coming to theaters this June. And they just lived like that for a couple days, traveling from LA to Austin and back, and they had an amazing time. And this movie came out, and I think it was 2013. I think it was the summer after Avengers. And so this is when Vine was new, and they made a bunch of Vines on the bus.
Rest in peace, Vine.
Yeah, and it's just this wonderful, super fun featurette that's just full of photos of them and a bunch of the Vines they made.
That's cool.
It's weird to see a Vine in black and white.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I really love how much behind-the-scenes story there was leading up to and then following this movie.
Yeah.
So it is available on Hulu, but I do recommend, check your local library. They probably have it. Yeah, give these featurettes a try. They add a lot of interesting stuff to the experience.
DVD commentaries are always interesting.
I didn't have time to watch them, but this DVD had one with just Joss and one with Joss and some of the cast.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. Last question for you before we move on to pitching what we'll do for next week.
Yes.
What was the strangest scene to you? Because at the start we mentioned that it's kind of an oddball movie, and there are just some weird things that happen in this film, or it's normal things presented in an odd manner. So what was the strangest, most odd scene for you?
This was strange in a way I absolutely loved. Like, this might have been my favorite bit in the whole movie. It's when Don John and, like, two of the people in his entourage, it's Baraccio and it's Conrad, who's Ricky Lindholm's character, they go up to tell Claudio, like, hey, seems like maybe your bride-to-be isn't totally loyal.
Uh-huh.
And the context in which this scene happens in the film is that it's the night after this, like, huge masquerade ball, and it's Claudio in the pool wearing a snorkel.
Yes!
Like, wearing, like, a mask, and he's also, like, drinking a martini, and it's shot, like, at eye level to him, like the camera has set like directly like on the rim of the in-ground pool. Yeah, and then they just I don't think they swim up towards him. They just pop up from the water.
Yes!
These three heads.
That
like,
was the
hey,
weirdest
Claudio.
thing in the whole movie.
I loved it.
So knowing Shakespeare is kind of about the sexual innuendo and stuff like that. He's in a pool at a party, or after one. I was kind of wondering if there was a lady friend underneath the water doing some stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
And that was not the case. But it's this really slow crawl as it zooms in on his face. And he's just standing there with this snorkel mask on and the breathing tube in. And he has his martini, and I'm just like, what are they doing? Like, it's just one of those things, it lingers a little bit too long on this, like, slow, like, zoom in on his face. And then, three characters just pop up straight from the water, and just completely normal, like, straight face, like, not like, I just got done with a lap, but like those like action like Navy SEAL movies where they just like slowly come up out of the water and they're like sneaking there, but they just like stand up and that's it, and they're like, we're moving on to phase 2 of the plan. Just like it's such a strange moment. That by far was the weirdest scene in that whole movie.
It's delightful. I'm giggling so much just thinking about it. Like, what a combination of choices to make.
That's also the movie poster, too. Like, one of the main movie posters is him in this snorkel in the water with his martini, and it's Much Ado About Nothing. And it's just like, what? How... Okay. Like, I mean, you would think at least, like the Guardians of the Galaxy movie poster has like stars and planets and aliens and like, okay, I get it's gonna be a sci-fi film, action adventure. This is a guy in a snorkel mask. What is this movie about? If you had only seen that poster, you wouldn't know a thing about the film, It's you just strange.
Know that it's not your elderly professor's Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's not your mom's Shakespeare for sure. So that is that. Last words on this film. Last recommendations or thoughts or whatever.
It's really fun. Like, if you're curious about Shakespeare, like maybe if you've never really studied him and you kind of want to see what it's about, this is a really good one to start with.
Especially
it is a comedy. Yeah.
I was just going to say, especially if you don't like the stylings of older, like, Shakespeare stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, that might be a bit of a turnoff, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, if you don't want to watch, like, doublets and pantaloons, but like the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet is too much for you, like it's too much like flash and gloss, this is right in the middle. Like, this is a very solid introduction. Yeah,
like we said, it's a much more suave version. So that's that. I recommend it as someone who is, this is not really my cup of tea. I had a lot more fun with it than I expected. I feel like it's a good family film too, for the most part. Like, there's not really any violence. There's a little bit of cuss words here and there, but the language is not like, it's not overwhelming. Like I think it's a good film to go check out, especially right here at the start of the summer, or like spring, summertime. It's good to check out.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Let's get on to pitching what we are going to do for this next week. It's my turn to pitch. I have a couple things. I'm gonna have to look two of them up so that I can get the stories of what they're about. I have 2 comic books and a manga. For us to decide on this week. The first one is from a publisher called Valiant. We haven't done any comic books on this show ever from Valiant. So the one I wanted to do is Exo Manowar, volumes 1 through 3. You are looking like you recognize this, or you've heard something about it.
Boggled. Can you type that out, what that title is for me? Because I'm like, how do those words and letters even fit together?
Exo Manowar, capital X, capital O, space Manawar.
So is this like a stingray is signing off a cute letter to you?
No. Far from it. So what's neat about the Valiant universe is they are a publisher of comic books that focuses on superheroes, which when you're talking about superhero comics, most people really only know about Marvel and DC. And anyone else who kind of tries to do it doesn't really go too far, or it's just not very good, you know. But this is Valiant's bread and butter. They have their own universe too, but they don't publish as many books. So if you want to read the entire universe, you can buy all of their books each month, and you might get I want to say they have closer to only 10 titles. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but it's much smaller, it's much more manageable, and you can read the entire universe, or you can read a certain character, and you'll be totally fine. So Exo Manowar is a similar story to a mix between Iron Man and Thor. If Thor had Iron Man's armor, that's kind of what it would be. This guy, I want to say this Visigoth guy, it might even be older than that, from ancient medieval times, gets kidnapped by aliens that come down to Earth, and he is enslaved, and his people are enslaved, but these aliens, their kind of religious prophecies tell of this warrior that will put on this suit of armor and be their champion, or something like that. And so this main character, this Visigoth dude who's been captured, breaks free, and he's been their slave for a couple years now, and he finds this thing that they're worshiping, and it accepts him as the wearer of the armor, and so he gets these special powers and stuff like that. But by the time he gets back to Earth, it's modern day times. So he's he's still speaking in the these and thous and but he's where this is Rome? This isn't Rome, so he's a bit lost. He's a bit kind of out of time, like Captain America is, but he's in this special suit, and he also kind of deals with aliens and like intergalactic threats like Thor might. So it's kind of cool. So that's Exo Man of War, and I wanted to pitch the first 3 volumes of that. The other 2, I kind of got to look up to get the synopsis here. So, my second pitch is a comic book by Terry Moore entitled Strangers in Paradise. And I have heard nothing but great things about this book. It is much longer than the 2 volumes that I want to pitch. But it is, according to Wikipedia, essentially the story of a love triangle between 2 women and 1 man. It's a slice-of-life dramedy that veers into the crime genre. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. So
okay.
I don't read into the plot section on Wikipedia there and spoil something. Yeah, I've read something else from Terry Moore. His artwork is fantastic. He self-publishes it all. He does the artwork. He writes it all, and it's just kind of phenomenal at the quality that he puts it out as. His artwork is this interesting mix of stuff that is like highly accurate, but has this very nice, simplified, like illustrative quality to it. And all of his books are in black and white as well, so he does not color them.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of slice of life dramedy that veers into the crime. I wanted to read the first 2 volumes of that. And that is pitch number 2. Let's see if I can pull up the synopsis for this third pitch here, which is a manga. I've actually technically seen the anime version of this, but I wasn't paying attention, so I have no idea what it's about. It was just one of those things that I like put on in the background while I did something else, and then by the time I looked up, it was like, it's episode 8. It's like, oh, I have no idea what's happening. This one is called Coppelion. It's spelled Coppelion. And the story follows 3 high school girls who were genetically engineered to be impervious to radioactivity. And they are sent to Tokyo after the city was contaminated by a nuclear accident. The anime adaptation, blah, blah, blah. In 2016, the catastrophe occurs after a nuclear meltdown from the nearby, I don't know how to pronounce that, power plant, which contaminates Tokyo, forcing the government to order its citizens to evacuate. 20 years later, Tokyo has become a ghost town due to the high levels of radiation. When a distress signal is received in Tokyo, the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force dispatches 3 teenage girls from the Dispatch 3 Special Force Coppelion to comprise the healthcare team. There you go. So they're sent in to go find survivors. And I wanted to read the first 3 volumes of that.
Okay.
So there you go. Pitch number 1, Exo Man of War. Superhero comics, kind of like a mix between Iron Man and Thor. Pitch number 2, Strangers in Paradise, which is slice of life dramedy, or drama, that kind of goes into the crime genre as well. And then Coppelion, which is kind of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi story about genetically altered high school girls. What are you in the mood for this week?
I definitely want to go with Strangers in Paradise. I am so intrigued by that concept. Yeah, slice of life, romantic triangle dramedy. crime. How crime fits into this, I am so interested to figure out how that goes down. So I really want to do that one.
There you go. So that is what we will be talking about next week then. These, actually all three of these are on Comixology Unlimited. So if you guys have that, you guys can go read them. And yeah, if you guys were here on the live chat with us, thank you guys for joining in. I saw a couple of you popped in. Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. This will be up on YouTube and as a podcast the following week if you missed the live stream. If you liked what we did here, though, go to patreon.com/thewhatnauts, and you guys can throw us a buck and get all of our episodes early, and you guys can enjoy that stuff. I'm sure we'll have more and better rewards coming down the road once we get our website up and running, which we are working on as this is out, as you guys are listening to this now. So yeah, if you like what we do, please support us, because that would help us out a ton. We would love your guys' support. The more you guys give, the more we can give back. And if you guys do not feel like giving monetarily, that is a-okay. Just enjoy the show, have some fun, and tell a friend. Go hit all the buttons that you need to on the proper social media channels, because that helps us out a bunch too. Melissa, where can they find you on the interwebs?
I can be found on the interwebs. I can be found on Twitter at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT, and I am a cast member on the Live Play RPG podcast, The Lost Library, on the Grayscale campaign. And just this past week, they released the first episode where I am actually playing, not like talking about character creation.
Oh, so sweet.
That was an exciting first for me, so you can go listen to that.
Awesome. And you can find me personally at Hush315. And then if you want to get updates for the show, you can follow all of us at the Whatnauts on Twitter as well. Thank you guys for listening. Next week is going to be Strangers in Paradise Volumes 1 and 2, so go read that and play along at home. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.